Hello, everybody. Oh, that is fun circle around my head. I will leave that for a moment. Welcome to this webinar on Agentic AI in insurance. My name is Ian Barkin. I'm co-founder of Magentic, and I will be your moderator for today. So thank you for joining us. We've got a great session. I'm really excited about this one. We've really been looking forward to doing this one. We've got some great guest speakers, and I'm joined by my co-founder as well. So I'm going to begin briefly by giving you a little bit of a sort of a message from your sponsor, if you will, from us. I will share my screen and let's see if this actually works. And it does. So this is the webinar we are going to work on through. Those are our distinguished guests. You will get to meet them in a moment. But first, before we do, wanted to give you a little bit of background on who we are. So the Magentic team has spent the last 20 years helping leaders across multiple industries, including insurance, financial services, healthcare, effectively complex regulated spaces, to successfully understand, adopt, deploy advanced automation and AI technologies. And as Magentic, we're typically engaged by leaders who are experimenting with AI as a means to grow their business, scale headcount, or modernize operations. But often, because today is so noisy and hype-filled, and we'll touch on that in a moment, a lot of these operators and leaders can be overwhelmed by what's happening in the tech landscape. And so in a lot of cases, the impact of the investments and the projects just aren't landing. So our approach and our point of view, and really sort of backed by this 20 years that we spent in the space, is a little different. So we are different than traditional system implementers who come in and just configure and leave automations and leave. We're different than consultants who create beautiful PowerPoint slides and leave. What we want to do and what we've designed is effectively a relationship in which we do the work. We live the work with a client. We help to deliver both the service, and we optimize it as we do it. And so what that allows us to do is dramatically lower costs, often up to 40 or 50% lower than the traditional way that a particular scope is being delivered. We increase the success rate of AI adoption thereafter because we understand the process, because we've lived and breathed it, and we put the right tools in the right places at the right times. And then we stay with you so that we enable ongoing orchestration and support and sustenance of these of this sort of agentic operating model now. So effectively an outcome as a service. So that is enough from me on the sponsor message. Thank you for bearing with me, and thrilled to have you guys here. So on with the show. So we've got an action-packed session. We've got some really great experts who are going to contribute their lifetime of experience in the insurance space specifically. I am going to bring them on stage in a second so they can introduce themselves, because that's so important to me that you get to know them and who they are. So let me stop sharing, welcome my guests in a way that isn't so round and silly. And here we go. So I mentioned David Brain is my co-founder at Magentic. So David, thank you for joining us, and he will be answering questions I throw at him during the day. And then we're joined by Richard Smith and Andy Niver. So Richard, Andy, welcome to this this live stream. We will go in alphabetical order by first or last name. Andy, you can get us started. Please introduce yourself and share your background and what you're up to these days.
Sure, thank you. Andy Niver, CNA Insurance. I'm responsible for our commercial and specialty operations for North America. As well as our billing and collections and premium audit functions. I've been at CNA for a little over 4 years. Prior to CNA, I worked with a provider for about 11 years, doing a lot of the things that Ian mentioned in terms of trying to bring solutions to bear for companies like CNA. So I'm really excited to be a part of the conversation, and thanks for having me.
Outstanding. Welcome, Andy. And Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Hey, everybody. Richard Smith. I'm Chief Product Officer at Verisk Specialty Business Solutions, which is a software arm of Verisk Group. My background's underwriting. I spent 10 years as a real estate underwriter, and I've spent the last 12 years in software, 9 of those years at Verisk. And I'm responsible for the business-led strategy of all of our products, which end-to-end across the insurance lifecycle.
Outstanding. Welcome to the live stream. Okay, we're going to make this a little interactive as well. We've got guests on the LinkedIn live stream. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen for a moment. And if you've got your phone on you, which of course you do, because who doesn't have their phone on them, I am going to pop this up. Hopefully everyone can see it. The QR codes live. They still are useful. If you can scan this QR code and log in with, or go to slido.com and log in with the number, let's see if we've got a critical enough mass of folks to help us get started with one of two questions we're going to ask you. We do this on all of our webinars and live streams, is just to sort of gauge the general maturity of the audience and the organizations in which they're working. So the question we ask, and it will fill in live, and let's see how many people actually answer it. So maybe the participants can also, or the speakers can too. But the question is, where are you on your AI journey? And the options are running pilots, or not even started yet, or researching and experimenting, evaluating vendors, so still trying to figure out who's going to be our partner on this journey, or running in production. Nice. We've got confirmation that Slido is working and that people have their phones and they're engaging. So researching, experimenting, and running pilots, and not started. So as the answers roll in, and my co-presenters and guests can weigh in on this too, but none of this is surprising. In many cases, when we have huge audiences and we ask hundreds of people where they are in their journey, it is often tending towards the left side of the spectrum, is that they're still early on. They're still trying to figure out what is AI? What do they need to compile and start to enact an AI strategy? And or they're in the early stages of it. And in fact, sort of the researching and experimenting is really where we see most people land. And it seems to be, even with a sample set of about 10 right now, still a faithful representation of where most folks are in their operations, in their AI adoption journey. Outstanding. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for weighing in on that. That confirms things that we hear and see. So let's move on and set the stage, and talk more about some of the things that we're seeing in the space. So first and foremost, as I said, everybody, you're under a rock if you aren't under pressure to have an AI strategy. And everybody, and this is no different this year and or next year than it has been for the last many years. The terminology might be a little different. You needed an automation strategy, although AI has stuck with us for 70 years. It's a phrase that we commonly use. So everyone knows they need an AI strategy. Now, the challenge is that we're at a stage in which the terms and the concepts, especially as you saw in the title of this one, Agentic AI, and this concept of agentic, is as noisy and hype-ish as it possibly can be. Everyone is familiar with the Gartner hype curve, and Agentic AI is as high as it can possibly be on said hype curve. And it could not be higher. And so that's the reality that we face, we all face, as there's a great deal of excitement, energy, and impetus to have AI strategies and to use what is new in the toolkit. And yet we also have to contend with the fact that the narrative around that toolkit could not be noisier and frankly more confusing. Now, another thing that we'd like to point out, and we've got frameworks that do this as well, but why not borrow one from McKinsey, is there is a spectrum of tools in said toolkit. There is never a single tool in this toolkit for this discussion. different names for it, but in this McKinsey table, you'll see across the top, it recognizes robotic process automation or sort of workflow automation or more traditional automation as we consider it today. And then it also recognizes some of the more sort of complex machine learning and AI-oriented capabilities that now also fall into the large language models and the generative capabilities that we see so many people embedding in their existing product set or coming out with new products along those lines. So that's one element of this table that's worth considering, and we'll get into that when we start to have the discussion. Is there's a spectrum of capabilities across this AI tool set. The other one is a breakdown of kind of the why. Why would you do this, and what would inspire an organization to start that research that the survey asked of earlier, to start to tinker and do pilots and start to look for ways to deploy this. It's not just to have new shiny things in an operation. It is either to reduce cost, reduce risk, to create some sort of increase in productivity and efficiency. There's one that also is involved in creating a better experience, customer experience, client experience, employee experience, et cetera. And then there's revenue generation. Is this helping us make more money, doing whatever it is we do better, more, faster, so that we can make more money? And so those are two different important elements to this. But ultimately, the point is this is a complex, matrixed trend, further complicated by the fact that some of the vocabulary is just still so new and in many cases so confusing. And so this is very much in line with the way that we see things, just to sort of refer back to the whole Magentic story of effectively there is no panacea, right? Agentic AI itself, all by itself, is not going to be the answer. The panacea, if there ever was one, is a measured multi-agentic model in which you're using great human talent, AI or human agents, and great AI agents, AI talent, in a sensible hybrid. So you figure out how best to tap into the qualities and the capabilities of the people in your team, or the people that you can tap into, and the capabilities of AI, however and wherever it makes sense and is reliable and trustworthy at this time, given the capabilities that are there. So with that, I ask one more question of the audience, which will kick us off, then serve to inform some of our discussions. So this one refers back to that McKinsey table, which is effectively, where are you looking to deploy this? So if you are early, if you are doing research, if you're looking at where this might apply in your operation, are you looking to, as our first respondent has already filled in, are you looking to automate simple tasks? Are you looking to, on the other end of that spectrum, make complex decisions? Or in between, are you looking to analyze and extract data from documents? Are you looking to summarize and generate reports, identify patterns in data? Or is it something else completely that we missed off in the multiple choice options? But what needs in your operation are inspiring the investigations that are currently ongoing in your operation to take AI from idea into action and application? So we have a tie now. This is like calling a horse race. Automating, simply analyzing, extracting data from docs, and patterns and data. So patterns and data is a more sophisticated, complex one. Often that stands on the shoulders of obviously having gotten the data. And in many cases, data obviously comes from documents or from unstructured sources that organizations have. Everything from just the knowledge bases you have in your operation to the inboxes across your team, across the organization, the emails sent, documents shared. Okay, I'll give this another second to see where this weighs in. But like other times we've run the survey, simple tasks is always the winner. The way that we understand and address the work that we do and the efficiencies that we hope to drive in our operation, we break it down and look at the task-based components of the work we do, and that's where we often look to apply AI of any form, any of those classifications of workflow automation to more of the generative and agentic AI. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for contributing. I will stop sharing now and go back to the panel and get us out of the circle framework again so we can see all of our lovely heads. And let's take this now forward. I'm really keen to kick off the discussion with our panelists, and from what we saw, from the information, from the sort of the general state of adoption, and from the answers that people are giving, I'm going to start by framing the opportunity. So, Andy, join me, if you will, and help me frame this opportunity within insurance. Obviously, the point of this webinar and your experience. What do you think, before we even get into AI, what are the most pressing challenges that insurance leaders face today?
Well, that's quite a question. In terms of, from my perspective in the operations space, there's other issues in insurance relative to social inflation and other components that are out there. But from an operational standpoint, it really is first and foremost with the people in ensuring we are enabling them with the right skills, training, tools to continue to progress and be more productive in their roles. And that might be through AI related type things. It might be through different types of training, but I think it starts with our people and continuing to make sure they're well equipped. Especially in insurance, where we're seeing a lot of folks that are aging out of the industry, and we're bringing new folks into the industry. So it's making sure that we keep pace with what the expectations are for the different generations as well.
Tremendous answer. On behalf of the human race, of which I am a member, it's compelling that you started with people, because too often it seems like some of the initiatives over the last few years have been, how do we do this without them? And so to start there, and to point out the demographic evolution is critically important. That is a burning platform for any industry, and an important one. Now, that's the pressing challenges. Full disclosure, you and I have known each other for a long time. You have been a pioneer of AI and automation in insurance for a long time. You've seen the evolution of AI. It has certainly evolved and gotten better. Are there challenges that AI alone, you think, are just not able to solve? I think obviously you will sort of, by alluding to people, you're already there. But what are the things that we still are wishfully thinking that AI can solve for us, but insurance is complex and difficult, and we still need people?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's about how you equip folks to be as effective at their jobs as possible, is kind of my starting point. But when we think about AI, agentic AI, these types of concepts in insurance, especially in the US, is a highly regulated industry, especially where we predominantly sit in the admitted markets. You have a lot of limited flexibility as to how you can deploy things in a way that provides the right level of transparency, trust, documentation. I think the technology of where it is today is pretty nascent to what might be required in the future for something like that. But
right.
For us, the way we think about it is just ultimately how do we use these tools and new technologies to advance the people's capability to be either more efficient or effective at what they're doing. And that's kind of our starting point in how we think about it.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so we've said agentic. We said it in the title. You've just used it. I've said it too many times. So before we go any further, David, can you give us a primer so that we're all on the same page? Just because, again, it's hypey, it's noisy, it's at the top of that hype curve. How do you define agentic AI? And I guess second half of question is how's it different than the traditional automation that we've been talking about for years?
Absolutely. Well, look, I'll do my best, but as with any new hype, it's all things to all people. But let's try and break down and put some reality around it. So Agentic AI marks the next generation of automation. So I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest there being 4 generations of AI. I'm sure we'll think of a 5th at least as I go through this. But if we consider the first being around rule-based systems, so these were systems where they would follow logic and decisions, but they wouldn't learn themselves. So think about robotic process automation. It was able to automate and perform a lot of tasks which would otherwise require human intelligence, but there wasn't that thinking and that decisioning within the tool. It had to be codified. The next one to come along, the second generation, was around machine learning. So models that learned patterns from data, still needed humans to frame the problems, but then would do a very good job of predicting. And we've seen that with a lot of intelligent document processing and a lot of machine learning algorithms that may predictive analytics and predict how cases should be handled and work accordingly. Then came the third generation, which got the most hype and attention, which is generative AI. And that was a huge game changer to anyone that needs to write an anniversary card for their wife, through to anyone that's looking to handle unstructured data to determine context. And that's been used in a lot of tools as part of a co-pilot offering. It's worked for us in brilliant use cases, like in terms of how we handle different language requirements, where we can have a team sort of interact really well with different geos, and also it works really well in terms of structuring the unstructured and vice versa. So you can get an email with some answers to your questions, and you can then position it in a way that you can pull out the data you need to then start an automation. And it can also write great emails and context back to your customers. So then we come to the fourth, and that is the agentic AI. And I'd say it's emerging. The way that I would describe it is that it's very much about taking agency, about knowing, being given the freedom to perform a set of tasks to arrive at an outcome. So it will plan the tasks, break down big goals into smaller ones and steps, to take those actions, so to run the tools, to call APIs, to execute workflows. To reason about the outcomes, so to determine if it's making progress and change its course as needed in order to achieve an outcome, to recover from failure, and to operate continuously, not just a single chat. So some of that is very ambitious, especially when you're in a highly regulated sector, because it involves a great deal of trust in the AI in order to make the right decisions and take the right actions. And we've just seen with the cyber attacks that have been performed over Claude in the last 24 hours, well, the last 2 months, but released in the last 24 hours. You can, with the best intentions, set up systems that could be abused and perform the wrong tasks. So you've got to be really careful when you're getting into the agentic AI space. So perhaps we're more of an agentic light organization in terms of how we tackle it, because what we try and do is we try and give agency, give determination of an outcome, but we do it in a way as we use a specific tool for a specific purpose. So you can use AI like generative AI in order to work out meaning and intent. You can then string that together with a decisioning system, with some rule-based automation like RPA. But ultimately, you need it to be done with people. So we don't believe that this is a lights out, replacement to the human workforce, but it's more about a tool that can work with people in order to supercharge them, in order to get more productivity out of your workforce.
Outstanding. Thank you. So to summarize, 4 different types of automation, and you didn't write the anniversary card for your wife.
Absolutely, no.
So those are my 2 takeaways. Okay.
She's lucky about, because it's a far better outcome.
Yes, I'm pretty sure she's not watching this, so we're good. We're safe. Okay, Richard, we've kept the powder dry, so let's bring you into the discussion. So, from an agentic AI perspective, from your perspective, just first and foremost, how's that definition sit with you and what you're doing and what you've seen, and then specifically within the context of insurance operations, are there areas and places where that sort of more agency and autonomy makes good sense, or is not a good idea?
Yep. So first question, Nothing to challenge at all what David said. Perfect. On my portion, I'm based in London, and we deal primarily with the Lloyd's of London insurance market, which is a market which is based hugely on human connection, on the fact it is a market, and in the square mile you've got thousands of insurance people. But it's also held back by something you could probably call corporate sludge, by inefficient processes, legacy tech, jobs that people don't want to do but have to do to get through the day and do their job. And I think where agentic comes in is solving those problems. It's not replacing people, it's actually letting them do more of what they want to do. If you ask any broker or underwriter in this market, and probably anywhere in the world, face-to-face trading, conversations with people has to continue, because there's some business you cannot commoditize. Where agentic can help, it is removing that unnecessary work, that work that just is difficult and challenging. And it's where we're seeing the most value in our market as well. There's people doing really small use cases. People obviously focus on data extraction, data summarization, which is key. My view is that that's a big area that could be standardized and commoditized across the globe anyway. So we're trying to focus on the things that are specific insurance process areas of attention.
Outstanding. Are there particular areas that you feel more comfortable using it? I mean, so there's documents, there's communications. Are there areas within insurance, like underwriting or claims or just document management, that you think will be earlier to adopt, and others that the level of caution and concern around data security and hallucination and sludge within AI, not just there's the human process sludge, and now there's, I guess, AI slop is what we're calling it.
Yeah.
But yeah, slap and
I
sludge.
think the key area we're seeing is where people are already embracing data first processes. So you look at placement in the Lloyd's of London market, there's a real uptick in digital placement, and also then what's called fast follow. So the ability to follow a lead line on an automated basis. Those areas are ripe for process improvement, the ability to remove inefficiency and use that, because the data is already there. And if you haven't got the data, you can do nothing with it. And that point where the broker and the underwriter interact, and they're trying to confirm those lines, anything you can move to expedite that process helps the ultimate insured, as well as allows those people to differentiate. And that's the area we're focusing, and we're seeing the most focus in our market.
Interesting. Okay, so Andy, do you agree? Are you seeing it differently? Are there other areas where as a grizzled insurance operator, where it's having more impact, or you wouldn't dream of using it yet?
I think the concept of taking all of that complex data, especially in the, as Richard mentioned, kind of the touch point between the broker and the underwriter, in the submission side, when requesting an endorsement, whether it be an exchange from a billing standpoint, those exchanges of information are opportunities, and are generally highly unstructured right now. 100% email based, typically. It's I'm looking for this. Here's my 4 or 5 attachments with a bunch of stuff, and here's what I'm looking for. And so it's an opportunity, but it's a complex one, which requires a lot of nuance in understanding how you are able to summarize that information in a way that you can do that as effectively as possible.
Yeah.
Where we look at things often is, in the case of requesting a risk for a limit, $1,000 limit is very different than $1 million limit. So making sure that the quality of understanding what that information is very important. So how do you maybe summarize that information so that an individual can confirm to take that forward and have a thoughtful process,
right.
Where it's more of a risk-based decisioning around how you integrate a human at the right points. And but to Richard's point, those are the opportunities, those touch points that I think are where ourselves and others are looking to utilize this technology specifically from an unstructured standpoint, because that's where a lot of the data is, at least in the U.S. Marketplace.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to ask a blunt question. So I've had the privilege of working with BFSI organizations throughout my career. Insurance, uniquely as an industry, is very proud of its vocabulary and its staid traditions and its resistance to evolution and change sometimes. You have tried to put in standards, right? You've put in Accord and other standards that seem to standardize and yet not standardize most communications. And a lot of what you just described hinges on some degree of evolution from where insurance is today to actually align on and create standards. Is the industry up for it? And I'll throw this both at Richard and Andrew. You guys can fight to whoever answers it. Yeah.
My viewpoint is, I wish, but no, is the answer to your question.
Yeah.
And you'll see it specifically in the growth in the E&S space.
Okay.
So excess and surplus in the US is growing at an exponential rate. And what that means is completely unstructured, not standard, away from Accord. These are risks that maybe historically have been placed in an admitted market where you could see some more standardized way of exchanging information, but now it's moving away from that and more sophisticated approaches to underwriting, a different way of approaching those risks. So I think in the industry, what we're seeing is trends away from that. So as organizations, we need to equip ourselves to be able to handle that variance at a much higher rate going forward than historically, would be my answer to that.
Right.
I'd say similar. We're sometimes having disruptive data models is beneficial to different players in the market. Consistency actually doesn't let people have that, which is unfortunate. What we're trying to do is, as soon as we see the information as data, we want to retain it and allow people to reuse it so we can help. And also put ourselves in a position where we know there's multiple standards that are used. We want to try and convert to multiple standards to try and help translation. It's even more exacerbated in the Lloyd's market because of the subscription model. A broker presents the same risk to 16 carriers. They all take a portion of it, and each of them do something different with the data, and it gets even more confused. And that's obviously after it's come out of the admitted market to the NS market as well. So it's I'm not seeing a trend to standardize consistently, but as vendors, we're trying to help with standardization without trying to dictate.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let me come back to a safe place for at least me. I'll throw David a question next, which is, if you can't standardize around industry standards, can you standardize around a bit of a vocabulary around measurable impact that some of this adoption of AI can have? And so, David, we've had the pleasure of working together for a long time, serving industry or companies in every industry, taking a look at how do we define for them the impact of AI on their operations. Yeah. And so, for this audience, for this discussion, how should insurance leaders think about the impact and ROI calculations for adopting agentic and that broader spectrum that we just talked about?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, at the risk of not being the sexiest and most exciting framework, I tend to fall back on business cases are really what drives adoption. So we've seen a lot with AI pilots that have been deployed in enterprises of all sizes over the last year fail just because they haven't kept an eye on the prize. You know, what is the outcome that you're looking to achieve? What are you trying to prove? So for that, you really need to focus on what the benefits are that you expect to get out of using agentics or any type of AI. And they typically become, you know, in the very obvious ones, such as savings, like, you know, what is this going to save me in terms of operating spend? What is it going to save me in terms of time that would need to be spent in processing applications. But those ones are usually the less interesting and the less impactful benefits that are going to drive the transformation of your business. So instead, I think start there, because that's usually a very easy one to get any CFO across the line with if it costs in on that. But don't stop there. So to look for the more strategic benefits, like what does this enable you to do around competitive advantage and revenue generation opportunities? What can it do around reducing failure demand and really improving that quality, so that you're not spending a lot of your time and efforts solving problems, but you're getting it right the first time. And also, what can you do in order to, or what can be done through use of agentic AI to improve the experience for your customers, for your for your partners in the market, but also in terms of your users, your teams, because it's usually a really poor user experience is a really good opportunity, where you've got really mind-numbing work that's being performed. It's usually really good for AI, and also it's an area where you'd usually see quite painful attrition, where you've got the churn of employees as they leave due to not having a very satisfactory experience of working in those processes. So try and take all of those into consideration, really, in terms of making sure that you define what benefits you want to achieve and stay true to it. And make sure you don't change, or nobody changes the goalposts as you're halfway through, because we've seen that happen quite a lot with pilots, where you start off and it's like, I don't care if it doesn't deliver an ROI. I just want to prove the technology. And then lo and behold, at the end of the pilot, it's good, but it didn't achieve an ROI. So, make sure that you've got the stakeholders bought in. It's all of the boring stuff, but it really resonates here as much as it does on any program.
Outstanding. Andy, you came out of the gate strong, referencing the people on your team and helping them, and also recognizing the demographic shifts, et cetera, in the labor market. But you've also been spearheading innovation and adoption of AI and automation for years and years. From your experience, what are the key KPIs? What has leadership called on you to try to prove or to deliver, and what KPIs have motivated you to keep going and adopt the projects that you adopt?
Yeah, ultimately it's business case by business case, to David's point. But the way we think about that is not just from a dollars and cents standpoint. You've got examples of how can you drive more effective quality in a process, which would then lead to better outcomes in a tangential way, right? Or how do you look at it so that speed is improved, right? From a go-to-market standpoint, whether it be an insurance kind of a submission process, how do you expedite that to have a better response time? That value is going to be demonstrated in repeat business, or retained business, or other opportunities that are very hard to kind of directly pinpoint from a dollars and cents standpoint. But if you're focused on kind of both sides of the coin of efficiency versus effectiveness, how do you look at those two different angles? And if effectiveness is what you want to accomplish with it, quality, speed, all the different more intangible things, how do you anticipate those influencing other metrics and then measure those in parallel? Because what we found is, we can improve a process and make it a lot faster, this piece of the process, but it needs to impact the broader set of activities around it. So, if I turn something around faster to somebody, but then it sits on their desk for 2 days, did I actually make an improvement? So it's really important about setting up those measurables and what you're trying to accomplish, and getting to things that will drive real value. But it doesn't always have to be focused necessarily on, I'm going to save money immediately, right? Because a lot of times you're trying to actually upskill and bring more out of an individual, which inherently is not like I'm going to reduce costs immediately in this particular endeavor.
Right. Okay. I have to say that that example of improving a component of an end-to-end process, but it having minimal impact just because it still faces other throughput yield challenges upstream, downstream is brilliant. I mean, and especially in this, especially in the agentic AI space, where we seem to be really atomizing every process down to where can we be using LLMs and various other components in each discrete step. You've got some sort of nuclear powered high performer task level activities happening within an end-to-end sequencer process that still might be very antiquated and really constrained elsewhere. So you've got like all sorts of heat here, but no light coming over. I really like that example.
I'd say that resonates perfectly with me as well. So it's just anecdotally, but we're looking at jobs to be done as a principal and saying actually end to end. We're lucky enough to have brokers, underwriters, pricing, claims, placement in our portfolio. And we've actually had a carrier client come to us and say they want us to work with one of their service providers and understand their end-to-end process and all touch points, to then look at any small areas where they can make a difference. And that's really refreshing for us to see, because it's someone who's offering up a solution for themselves where we can help, but we don't know their problems. And it's a really refreshing thing to see people coming to us and having those conversations.
That's tremendous. And I was going to hand the mic over to you, Richard, just to ask your perspective on, what are the examples of impact that you propose that you can deliver? What's even the timing behind it? Is there a time scale? I mean, obviously, there's messages around the speed to value on this. What are you generally seeing in the space as far as the impact of automation of any sort on insurance operations?
In speed and time to benefit, I think depending on what you're measuring, as Andy said, you could probably get benefit almost immediately as long as you put the requisite security and processes around what you're doing. There's real added value you can put into your business. But we're seeing a distinct split at the moment between what our broker clients are looking at, and we're a heavily broker-led market outside of the US. Because they're looking at competitive advantage. A lot of them are going heavily digital, trying to do data first. And in that equation, data becomes really powerful for them. And then they can add real value to their insured. But they don't really have to have a concern about what the carrier does with that. The carrier side, we're seeing how they write better risks. So they're not necessarily focused too much on speed in the large specialty complex market.
Right.
They want to underwrite the right risk. And a lot of that comes down to summarizing data. One thing we're not getting anywhere near is decision making. We're just trying to say to clients, we know that how you use our software, we think there's a place where we can add value for you. and it's here. But then also opening up a framework where if they've done things themselves, created their own agentic, worked with people like yourselves and created solutions, we'll allow them the framework to embed it in the solutions as well, because we're not a LLM expert, we're a software provider. We're just looking at where we think value can be added. But it's quite interesting for me as an ex-underwriter to see that distinct split, a distinct perspective of where value is added. And the brokers leading that charge in digital data first,
right,
and a lot of the market being forced to follow suit, which is a good thing. It's just being led from a different perspective.
Right. The interesting theme, and I think David and I resonate with this heavily as well, is the experts, the domain experts. Andy, will use you as our example. You know what you need, you know the challenges you face, the frictions you endure, and the outcomes you're trying to achieve. And the nice thing about some of the evolution of these technologies is they're getting a little easier for us to sort of prototype and think through what it is that we'd like to see happen. And then some of the capabilities really are enabling us to prototype and maybe put into action a broader, more holistic automation than ever before. So it's an exciting, but also it's an exciting time that requires a level of digital quotient within the team to understand the tools available, the cautions, the guardrails, and the limitations, especially, again, alluding back to just all the hype and noise in this space. I will invite anybody who is listening to contribute questions to the LinkedIn form. We've got one question that I would be remiss if we moved on to the next section without addressing. It's Joseph Gali had asked, and I'll throw this out to the whole panel. The question is, what's the most overlooked outcome to measure when evaluating agentic AI, especially beyond cost savings and cycle time? So beyond cost savings, cycle time, what's the most overlooked outcome?
I'll jump in with perspective. I think it's the implications on your employees and your team, because you can easily jump in and have fun with things, but you don't think about how it's going to be embedded or perceived. And I think is that how does it fit into your operations is something that we see overlooked quite a lot.
Perfect. So sort of change readiness and experience in general as far as, okay.
Yeah, just to echo that point, I think, and I nailed it. I mean, the quality and stuff, but that all plays through into the same things of speed and cost. But I think experience is really important. But I think to Richard's point, it's also one of the most overlooked areas that needs to be considered in terms of how do you successfully deploy and make changes, is that experience. Because I think quite often the team is usually left behind on a deployment. So, the focus is on the tech, but not so much the people that are using the tech. And that can lead to changes in culture. So it's got to be really, really carefully managed.
Well, this sets me up for the last category I wanted to discuss with you guys, which is leading change and building readiness. So thank you, everybody, for a perfect segue into the final topic. But ultimately, resistance to change has long been one of the hindrances, one of the frictions that's enabled organizations to evolve, and industries, frankly, to evolve. And so given that, and given the sort of the supercharged capabilities and powers of the agentic toolkit these days, I mean, David, I'll throw it back to you just to kick us off. But, as you said, leading change is important. How should companies look to do that? What are the key levers and elements that they need to emphasize?
Yeah, what strikes me is that going through all of the different waves of AI, as we mentioned, the key theme in all of those projects is where the technology where the projects tend to fail is not so much on the technology, but it's on, did we get the requirements right and enough understanding? Did we manage the change with the team and the people, and did we manage the benefits? Once we went to achieve an outcome, did we actually follow it through and make those changes to our business to realize those benefits? And quite often it's those three things where things go off the rails. So I think having a strong approach to all three is going to be really important. One of the things that we've done actually in our business, which has led to like an unlocking of huge amounts of success for our clients, is historically we would do this more as a service, like a system implementer. It's a case, if you want some AI, we'll jump on a few calls, you tell us your requirements, we'll go off and build something, you'll say you're happy with it, you'll test it, we'll release it. But what was happening was that the change management wasn't really going through. The benefits realization wasn't therefore coming because there wasn't changes in the team structures that meant you could really unlock the benefits. Or in terms of how it's deployed with your customers. And quite often what we were asked to provide didn't actually match what was needed. So what we've put in place is a living lab, which is really about how we take the processes, put them into a controlled environment, run that in order to really determine the requirements, and to also enable us to make the changes in a very controlled way, which then releases the benefits. That's our approach. I'd suggest that other firms look at doing something similar if they don't want to go for an outsourced approach to implementing AI. Look at how that can be applied in your organization. Make sure you've got strong frameworks, that you've got a great project team and a great change team. Make sure you're really putting the people at the heart of the process and the changes, and make sure you follow through. Don't sort of go weak halfway through, start to sort of relax the targets or delay the deadlines or put off the changes, because then that leads to just a dilution of the benefits, and then that affects the company's appetite to keep going.
Nailed it. Andy, you've been a champion of change and running major initiatives throughout your career. What's your hierarchy? Where do you start?
Yeah, I think David kind of nailed it on making sure you've got a clear sense of the benefits, and also how you communicate that to the individuals involved in the change. Everybody, the what's in it for me is real. What is the change? How will it impact me, my day to day? Richard made a comment earlier, which I think is spot on about. Ultimately, we want to enable, whether it be an underwriter, a broker, or whomever, to go out and do what they are best at doing, as much as possible. So, in most of these use cases, it's really unlocking that time, or unlocking that experience. And those are those folks or other people, whether it be on the underwriting side or on an operations side or wherever in the claims side, ensuring that they understand how that does that for them. And then also to engage them in a way that they will be providing feedback through the process of how that is either happening or not happening, so that you can continue to make it better and understand where you need to make changes, where things are falling down, ultimately with the pursuit of success, right? And as much as you can engage those folks on the front lines that are actually doing the work, you will have more and more success, because they're the ones that really will unlock value, in any sort of change or implementation.
Right. And being on the front line, they're the ones who are closest to the problems or the opportunities, as well. They're the ones who are closest to the frictions. They're the ones who, throughout our professional services careers, we have some hilarious anecdotes of client leadership telling us that there's very little we could ever tell them about their business because they know everything that goes on. And then, within a day, we come back with these funny stories of just contortions that are made by the team to make things actually run because the systems are just so bad or slow or disconnected or just copious. And
You
so
don't have any of those yet. None.
yeah, that's right. No, not you. Richard, I'll give you a final word on change. There's one question that's come through that's inspired me, so I'll build on that, and then we'll move on to wrapping this wonderful session up.
I just reiterate what everyone else said, and even the question that's around what people should do to embed it. It's all about why and incremental benefit. So working in products, we're all about, we don't want things to be seen as an IT project. We want things to be seen as business value. If you can tell people the story of, we're doing this because this means you to your business or your life, and here is the first phase, which is added value. We know we're a software vendor, so we try and work with partners who have a different relationship with a client, so we can have a holistic conversation saying, we'll do what we do, build software. Some of us have got business experience, but we're not practitioners. And get someone who can help you embed it in your system, in your process, because there's nothing worse than a great idea. Assuming our ideas are great, that don't make it through to the people it's meant to get to. It's a waste of everyone's time. So that's reiterating what Andy and David said. It's all about the why it matters to the person you're delivering it to.
Beautifully put. So the question I alluded to, Edward Vandenberg asked the question, are you or will you engage your CFO? And I can't help but want to take this myself, and then others can weigh in. But interestingly, the CFO traditionally, at least in my experience, was the gatekeeper and the purse string guarder. And more and more, it's really exciting to see that the CFO is seen as a true champion of change and somebody who can really spearhead and drive it, because of their remit and their view holistically over an organization. So David and I are doing some really interesting projects effectively with the office of the CFO to look at how do you drive truly holistic, end-to-end meaningful change powered by AI, any form of it, all forms of it, and with the stakeholders that the CFO can bring to bear. So I think the answer to the question is you should engage with your CFO early and often, and CFOs now are in a real prime position to be true champions of this next evolution of operating change. We see it. We work with them closely, and others have a great opportunity. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add in regards to the role of a CFO in this era of agentics.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. They are a partner like the rest of us in executing the business strategy that's set forth. And as we just articulated about a project, you have to have a pretty good why. That why is probably connected to your strategy. So there's no reason why they aren't supportive to try and help move that forward. And they will be a strong partner in understanding all the benefits and everything that will, holding, being a good accountability partner at the end of the day. Did you get what you were expecting to get? And that's how you should, engage them. And yeah, they're a great partner for us. And I think they should be one of your first calls.
That's outstanding. Well, I will let a second question from Joseph Gali, who wins on the Great Questions competition. He asks, and I think this is a great way to take us out. If you had to advise teams within insurance companies on one thing to change in their approach tomorrow to increase the success rate of AI initiatives, what would it be? And so this really is a great way for us to sort of looking forward. What sort of guidance do you, Richard, Andy, have as far as peers of yours in the industry? What should they do as soon as they hang up here, and as soon as they go back to engaging with their teams and sharing what they've learned and looking to be the champions of this evolution in their organizations?
I'm happy to go first, and this isn't. I don't think this relates specific to agentic. It just relates to change. Forget what you do today. Think about what you want to be tomorrow, and work out a plan to get there. But because if you just try and jump ahead, it's that destination and the why again. Small steps, and with agentic, it's even more important because people will be nervous.
Perfect, Andy.
Yeah, I think to Richard's last point there, start small somewhere and build confidence in the team, the technology, the approach, and build upon it, because that will build momentum to continue on in different ways and forms. And don't try and do too much up front would be my advice.
David, I'll give you the final word. You can just copy and paste that and agree.
I don't deserve the last word for sure with these guys.
I'll certainly follow up with more words.
I was thinking more of Andy and Richard, but that's good to know. I think the key thing is, and we've seen it a lot, is focus. I mean, sorry, I sound like a broken record, and it's the same thing that Richard and Andy have been saying. I mean, is focus on the outcome. So many times we've seen organizations instead get distracted by the shiny tech, and then you're looking to prove out where can I use this tool rather than what do I need to achieve. So outcome over tech every day.
Outstanding. Well, I will wrap it here. Thank you to Richard and Andy for joining us and for sharing your experiences and your insight and just your thoughtful answers. It was encouraging to hear the emphasis on humans and talent and team throughout this. Also encouraging to hear the emphasis on just the domain experts who are in the trenches, who are at the coalface, who are doing the tasks as a partner in all of this change, because they know what is getting in the way of good. And so to work with them and then just generally a measured, holistic view of this isn't, as David said, this isn't about deploying the next coolest sounding bit of tech. It is about moving the needle as far as the way that you serve end customers, whoever they might be, customers of internal processes, customers of external ones. And all the more important in insurance, which is a hugely complex industry, heavily regulated, and an industry that has, because of its complexity, struggled to evolve and adapt to change in the past. But it feels like today's capabilities and the maturity of the leadership, as we saw from Richard and Andy, is there to help spearhead those evolutions and changes in really meaningful ways. So on behalf of myself and David and the Magentic team, thank you, Richard, Andy. Thank you, everybody who joined us. We've got a white paper on AI agents and insurance. We'll share links with in this post and in the comments if anyone wants to tap into that. And we're always here for interesting discussions to share our experiences. So please reach out. Please follow Richard and Andy on LinkedIn. They are experts and visionaries you should be connected to. And with that, have a lovely rest of your Friday and a great weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.